At exactly 3 a.m., my CEO fiancée finally came home. She looked exhausted as she pushed the door open, then smiled weakly and said, "Honey, I'm sorry you waited at the Civil Affairs Bureau all day. Can we register tomorrow instead?" I let out a cold laugh. The moment she heard my response, she froze. As she stepped inside, the scent of another man's cologne clung to her more strongly than the alcohol on her breath. She leaned against the entryway cabinet to steady herself. Her shirt collar was badly wrinkled, and a black tie mark, something that clearly wasn't hers, was pressed against her wrist. I was sitting quietly on the living room sofa. On the coffee table were two things: our unused household registration book and a freshly printed notice revoking the authorization for the land's house system. She looked at me for a second before lowering her eyes and forcing a gentle smile. "Yenjo, you're still awake." I didn't answer. She walked over, sat beside me, and reached for my hand, pulled it away. Her hand stopped in midair before she forced another smile. "I'm really sorry about today. The company had an emergency. Ji Hang's overseas investors suddenly wanted a meeting, and I couldn't leave." She said it so casually, as if me waiting outside the Civil Affairs Bureau from 9 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon meant nothing. As if ignoring all my calls, leaving every message unanswered, and offering no explanation could simply be brushed aside as an emergency. I looked straight at her. "So even the Civil Affairs Bureau became part of the company's emergency?" She frowned. "Yenjo, don't be sarcastic. I'm exhausted. Can't you cut me some slack?" Then her voice softened again. "Honey, you waited for nothing today. Let's register tomorrow, okay?" The way she called me honey felt less like love and more like she was trying to calm down an obedient pet. In the past, I would have softened. I would have noticed the redness in her eyes, remembered how she worked herself sick while building her company, even to the point of stomach bleeding, and found another excuse to forgive her. But not today. At 4:27 that afternoon, while I was sitting alone in the cafe across from the Civil Affairs Bureau, I received 3 anonymous videos. The first showed Shinjimin and Ji Hang walking out of a hotel elevator together. The second showed Ji Hang wrapping an arm around her shoulder as he whispered, "Let him wait today. It'll remind him that without you, he's nothing." The third showed Shinjimin making no effort to push him away. Instead, she quietly replied, "Stop fooling around. I'll have him sign the authorization tomorrow." That was the moment everything became clear. She hadn't accidentally missed our registration. The entire thing had been planned. I leaned back on the sofa and laughed quietly. "Shinjimin, there's no need anymore." She looked at me in confusion. "No need for what?" Without saying another word, I slid the authorization revocation notice across the table. "I didn't wait for nothing today." A flicker of unease crossed her face. I looked directly into her eyes and said each word slowly. "I waited for proof of your betrayal, and I waited for the deadline to revoke the land's house system authorization." Her hand froze halfway toward the document. The tired expression slowly disappeared from her face. "Pei Yanzhao, what are you talking about?" "It's simple." I picked up my phone and opened my email history. At exactly 5 o'clock this afternoon, Mansion Technology's temporary commercial authorization for the land's house system officially expired. I looked at her calmly. "You never completed our marriage registration. You didn't fulfill the premarital cooperation agreement. And you never renewed the authorization." I paused. "So tomorrow's product launch won't be using my system." The living room fell completely silent. She stared at me for several seconds before letting out a cold laugh. Not a guilty laugh. A laugh filled with disbelief. "Pei Yanzhao, have you lost your mind? The land's house system belongs to Mansion Technology. The company paid for the equipment, the servers, and the entire development team." Without saying a word, I pulled out another document. The original system architecture was filed under my personal studio. I flipped to the next page. "The core algorithm is registered under my name." Then another. "The company only paid for the testing environment. It never owned the underlying technology." She grabbed the papers with trembling fingers. "You investigated me?" I shook my head. No. My eyes drifted to her wrinkled collar. You simply forced me to wake up. Her face darkened. Yanzhou, I know you're angry about today, but don't drag the project into this. Tomorrow's launch has 3 major investors attending. Ji Hang has spent an entire month preparing for it. If you revoke the authorization now, are you trying to destroy me? The moment she mentioned Ji Hang, I couldn't help laughing. He prepared for a month? I unlocked my phone, tapped the recording, and pressed play. Ji Hang's voice filled the room through the recording. Relax. Someone like Pei Yanzhou can be controlled with a marriage promise. He knows how to write code, but he doesn't know how to negotiate. I'll handle tomorrow's press conference. He won't make any trouble. The color drained from Shin Jimin's face. I stopped the recording and looked at her. So he really has been preparing for a month. I gave a bitter smile. Preparing to steal everything I built and call it his own. She shot to her feet, her voice rising. Were you spying on us? I stood up as well. No. That's surveillance footage from the hotel's public hallway. You were simply talking loud enough for everyone to hear. Her breathing became uneven. I looked straight at her. Shin Jimin, before today, I thought we were just having relationship problems. Now I know the truth. You didn't forget our registration. You deliberately left me waiting at the Civil Affairs Bureau until I lost my patience, so you'd have the perfect chance to make me sign away the last thing I still owned. She froze. Not a single word came out. Just then, someone knocked on the door. I already knew who it was. Shin Jimin hurried over and opened it. If you're enjoying our stories, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more amazing content for you. We're on a mission to reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription brings us one step closer. Thank you for being part of our journey. Ji Hang stood outside with his suit jacket hanging over one shoulder, wearing the same smug expression he'd had in the videos. He looked at me and smirked. Yanzhou, you're still awake? Come on, don't be so petty. Sherman only did it for the company. I picked up the file on the coffee table and walked over. Perfect timing. I handed him the withdrawal notice. For tomorrow's press conference, you'd better find a system that actually belongs to you. The smile disappeared from Ji Hang's face. Shin Jimin immediately reached for my arm. Pei Yanzhou, don't be impulsive. I calmly met her eyes. I'm not being impulsive. I paused. The moment you left me waiting all day at the Civil Affairs Bureau, I stopped being your fiancé. I looked at both of them. I am simply the legal owner of the land's house system. Ji Hang snatched the document from my hand. He barely read the first 2 lines before his expression changed completely. At that moment, my phone vibrated. Chun-Ji had sent a message. Withdrawal notice delivered to all partners. All external interfaces will automatically freeze at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I locked my phone and headed toward my room. Behind me, Shin Jimin finally panicked. Pei Yanzhou, stop. I didn't turn around. The first move had already been made. The next morning, at exactly 7:30, I woke to the sound of shouting in the living room. Shin Jimin was trying to keep her voice down. Ji Hang wasn't. Sherman, you can't let him ruin everything. The press conference starts at 9. The interfaces freeze at 8. Investors arrive at 8:30. Either you convince him to withdraw the notice, or I won't even be able to get on stage. I'm trying, Shin Jimin replied. Ji Hang let out a mocking laugh. Trying? Doesn't he just want you to comfort him, marry him, and make him feel important? Do that and he'll come running back. I opened my bedroom door. Both of them turned toward me. Ji Hang was sitting comfortably on the sofa as if he already owned the place. Shin Jimin stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. Her eyes were bloodshot from a sleepless night. The moment she saw me, she hurried over. Yanzhou, let's talk. About what? She took a deep breath, forcing herself to sound calm. I was emotional last night. She lowered her pride. Today's press conference is extremely important. Restore the system first. After that, we'll go register our marriage this afternoon. Ji Hang also stood up with a fake smile. Exactly. There's no reason for 2 men to compete. Don't worry, Yanzhou. I'll make sure everyone knows you contributed to the project. I looked at him. My contribution? 3 years of sleepless nights, my core algorithms, the pilot hospitals, the supply chain partnerships I fought to secure. In his eyes, all of that was worth nothing more than a brief mention. I walked over to the dining table and poured myself a glass of water. Then I looked at Jihang. Tell me something. I took a sip. According to today's press conference script, I set the glass down. Who is listed as the founding architect of the land's house system? Jihang's smile stiffened. Shen Jimin frowned. Yen Zhou, this isn't the time to argue. I looked back at her. Then when should I? When he stands on stage using my work. When investors sign their contracts. When the press releases call Jihang the creator. And only then should I complain. Shen Jimin fell silent. A moment later she quietly said, Jihang just came back from overseas. He needs an opportunity. I couldn't help laughing. So, my life's work is his opportunity? Her expression hardened. Don't make it sound so ugly. The company belongs to me. I have to think about the bigger picture. I looked at her calmly. And is there any place for me in that bigger picture? She couldn't answer. Jihang adjusted his cufflinks and smiled confidently. Yen Zhou, you're overthinking this. Technical people don't need to be in the spotlight. Investors wouldn't understand someone like you anyway. I slowly put my glass back on the table. Then I looked him straight in the eyes. Really? I paused. Then tell me, do you understand it yourself? The smile on Jihang's face instantly disappeared. I picked up my tablet and opened the press conference script. I turned it toward Jihang. Page 3. I pointed to a paragraph. You wrote that the dynamic keychain performs multi-layer recursive verification locally on the user's device. I looked him in the eyes. Explain it. What exactly is local multi-layer recursive verification? Jihang's expression instantly stiffened. Shen Jimin glanced at him. The corner of his mouth twitched before he forced a smile. That's technical content. There's no point discussing it here. I calmly took the tablet back. If you can't explain it, then you have no business standing on that stage. I locked the screen and looked at both of them. The API will freeze at exactly 8 o'clock. I paused. This isn't me throwing a tantrum. It's the contract being enforced. Shen Jimin finally lost her composure. Pei Yanzhao. Her voice shook. Do you really have to make things this ugly? Do you even realize how much the company will lose if today's launch fails? I nodded. I do. She froze. I continued calmly. 17 million in customer prepayments. 30 million in valuation commitments. And the overseas consulting contract Jihang just signed. I looked at him. That will become worthless too. Jihang's face instantly turned pale. How? Do you know about that contract? I looked at him without any emotion. Because you used the authorization for the land's house system as your performance guarantee. I took a photocopy from my folder and placed it on the table. And that authorization doesn't belong to you. Shen Jimin immediately turned toward him. You used land's house as collateral? Jihang hesitated. It was a business necessity. A business necessity? I tossed the contract onto the table. You never asked for my permission. You never informed legal. There was no board approval. You simply packaged my technology as your own asset. I stared at him. Jihang, you've got more nerve than I gave you credit for. For the first time, he dropped the polite act. Pei Yanzhao, don't forget something. You've lived in the Shen family's house for 3 years. The only reason this project exists is because Jimin gave you the platform. Without her. He sneered. Your code is nothing more than useless files sitting on a hard drive. The moment he finished speaking, the doorbell rang. A few seconds later, Shen Jimin's mother walked in. Luo Manqing wore a perfectly tailored dark green suit. Everything about her was immaculate. Even her gaze felt colder than her daughter's. I heard you've been causing trouble first thing this morning. She didn't even bother looking at the documents on the table. Instead, She looked directly at me. Pei Yanzhao, a man should know his place. Jaimin agreeing to marry you was already doing you a favor. And now you're threatening her with a project? What kind of behavior is that? Shen Jaimin quietly tried to stop her. Mom, don't provoke him. Luo Manqing let out a cold laugh. Provoke him? She looked at her daughter. Everything he has today came from you, didn't it? She reached into her handbag, pulled out a document, and threw it onto the table. Sign it. I lowered my eyes. It was a prenuptial property agreement. An additional clause had been added. After marriage, all technical revenue generated by the land's house system would belong entirely to Mansion Technology. Pei Yanzhao would receive only an annual salary and a one-time bonus. The buyout amount, 200,000. 3 years of my life. Sold for 200,000. I slowly looked at Shen Jaimin. So this is what you meant when you said we'd register this afternoon. Her lips moved slightly. It's only to avoid future disputes. I laughed. Future disputes? I picked up the pen. A trace of hesitation flashed across Shen Jaimin's face. Luo Manqing relaxed. Ji Hang quietly let out a sigh of relief. They all believed I had finally given in. Instead, on the signature line, I slowly wrote 4 words. Refused to sign. I put the pen down. I'll be handing this agreement to my lawyer. Luo Manqing's face immediately twisted with anger. You dare? I looked at her calmly. Not only do I dare, I'll also send this agreement. I picked up Ji Hang's contract, along with his performance guarantee contract. To every investor. Shen Jaimin rushed forward and pressed her hand down on the documents. Pei Yanzhao. Don't force me. I looked at her hand. The engagement ring was still on her finger. The same hand Ji Hang had been touching in the hotel video the night before. Without saying a word, I reached over and gently slid the ring off her finger. She froze. I placed it on the table between us. Shen Jaimin. From this moment on, we're no longer engaged. The color drained from her face. I picked up my briefcase and headed for the door. Behind me, Luo Manqing shouted furiously. If you walk out today, don't ever think about coming back to the Shen family. I stopped for only a second. Without turning around, I replied, Don't worry. I never planned on coming back to a place like that. The elevator doors slowly closed. Just before they shut completely, I saw Ji Hang frantically pulling out his phone. I knew exactly what he was trying to do. He was calling the tech department. What he didn't know was that at exactly 8 o'clock, every back-end key would automatically become read-only. And the only person who still held the master key was me. By 8:55 a.m. Mansion Technology's new product launch was about to begin. The event hall was already packed with investors, reporters, and guests. I never walked inside. Instead, I sat quietly in the coffee shop across the street. An untouched cup of black coffee sat in front of me. Across the table, Chun-Ji quietly flipped through the evidence we had organized the night before. After a moment, he looked up. You're really not going in? I shook my head. If I show up too early, it'll ruin the show. He chuckled. You always seemed so calm and easygoing. He closed the folder. But when you finally decide to fight back, you're absolutely ruthless. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched the entrance of the launch venue through the coffee shop's glass window. Outside, Shen Jaimin stood in a perfectly tailored white suit. Her makeup was flawless. She wore the same confident smile she always did. Anyone who didn't know her would never guess she hadn't slept at all the previous night. Standing beside her was Ji Hang. He wore a dark blue suit, and pinned to his chest was a badge that read, Chief Architect, Land's House System. My eyes stayed on those words for 2 full seconds. Chun-Ji noticed it too. That badge could become evidence. I nodded. Take a picture. He immediately raised his phone and snapped several photos. At exactly 9 o'clock, the press conference began. The giant screen lit up as the host enthusiastically announced, Please welcome Mr. Ji Hang, the new Chief Strategy Officer of Mansion Technology and Chief Architect of the Land's House System. Thunderous applause filled the hall. Ji Hang confidently walked onto the stage. He looked completely at ease. His posture was steady. A faint smile rested on his face. He carried himself like someone who had spent years speaking before large audiences. After greeting everyone, he began. The land's house system is the project I value most since returning to China. It isn't simply a data security platform. It is the core engine that will support future collaboration between supply chains and medical data. I slowly picked up my coffee and took a sip. The bitterness was enough to suppress the nausea rising inside me. Those words, they had once been mine. 6 months earlier, I had written that exact vision across my office whiteboard. That afternoon, Shinjimin sat beside me and handed me a warm glass of milk. Smiling, she had said, "Yen Zhou, you're especially attractive when you explain your ideas." Back then, I believed she was listening because she admired me. Now I understood. She hadn't been listening. She had simply been memorizing my words, so someone else could claim them later. Ji Hang clicked to the third slide. Suddenly, the presentation froze. He paused. The host quickly stepped in. "It appears we're experiencing a brief network delay. Our technical team is already handling it." Backstage, technicians began typing frantically. A second later, the screen came back. Instead of the demonstration, a bright red warning box appeared. Authorization expired. External access permission revoked. The entire venue fell silent. Ji Hang's confident smile froze. Shinjimin immediately turned toward the backstage area. Qin Yanbei frowned. "Director Shin, what's happening?" She forced herself to stay calm. "Mr. Qin, it's only a small technical issue. Our engineers will resolve it immediately." She quickly pulled out her phone and called the technical director. The moment the call connected, the panicked voice on the other end spoke before she could. "Director Shin, we're locked out. The core interface is completely sealed. We only have operational permissions. We don't have the underlying authorization keys." Shinjimin lowered her voice. "Find Pei Yanzhao." The technical director sounded almost desperate. "Mr. Pei revoked every external authorization belonging to Mansion Technology last night. The back end shows that the rights holder executed a contract expiration closure. Use the backup system." "We can't. The backup also requires Mr. Pei's signature key." The color slowly disappeared from Shinjimin's face. Meanwhile, Ji Hang struggled to keep control of the stage. He forced another smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is actually part of our planned security demonstration. The land's house system automatically locks itself whenever abnormal authorization is detected." The words had barely left his mouth when another message appeared on the giant screen. "Unauthorized commercial demonstration detected. Relevant access records have been preserved." The audience immediately began whispering. The atmosphere shifted. Qin Yanbei's expression turned completely cold. I calmly set my coffee cup on the table. Chun Ji checked his watch. "It's time." I stood up, crossed the street, and walked toward the conference hall. The security staff at the entrance recognized me and instinctively stepped forward to stop me. Without saying a word, I handed one of them a lawyer's letter. "Either deliver this to Director Shin, or let me inside." The moment he saw the law firm's official seal, his hand visibly trembled. I pushed the door open and walked in. On stage, Ji Hang was still trying to continue. Sweat had already formed across his forehead. The moment Shinjimin saw me, her expression completely changed. For a brief second, it looked as though she had finally found someone who could save her. At the same time, it looked as though she had just seen her own sentence being carried out. "Yen Zhou." She hurried toward me, lowering her voice. "Restore the permissions first. We can talk about everything else afterward." I didn't even look at her. Instead, I walked straight toward the stage. Ji Hang's face instantly darkened. "Pei Yanzhao, this isn't the place for you to make a scene." Ji Hang glared at me from the stage. Without saying a word, I picked up the backup microphone from the host's table. "I'm not here to make a scene." I slowly looked across the investors and reporters filling the hall. I'm here to make a declaration of ownership. Shin Jimin immediately reached for the microphone. Before she could touch it, I stepped back. At the same moment, Shin Ji moved to my side. Director Shin, he said calmly, please conduct yourself professionally. Everything here is being recorded. Her hand froze in midair. I took out my phone and connected it to the projector. The giant screen behind us lit up. The first document, a filing record, appeared. The filing date for the original land's house system architecture. I changed to the next image. The second document, the registration certificate for the core algorithm. Another swipe. The third document, the temporary authorization agreement between Mansion Technology and my personal studio. I paused. The authorization expired yesterday. The audience instantly erupted into whispers. Ji Hang's face shifted from pale to green. I looked at the badge pinned to his chest. Mr. Ji, you just told everyone this is the project you valued most since returning to China. I looked at him quietly. May I ask? You returned to China last November. But the first submission record for the land's house system was filed in March of the year before that. I displayed the submission history. Every entry showed the same account. Mine. Ji Hang forced himself to stay calm. Those technical materials were developed through internal company collaboration. I nodded. Then explain something. I enlarged another page. Why is the author's digital signature on the core module registered under my private key? I turned toward the audience. You're welcome to photograph every document. If not, my lawyer will release an official statement later today. At last, Shin Jimin spoke. Pei Yanzhao. That's enough. Her eyes had turned red. Do you really have to humiliate me in front of everyone? I looked at her calmly. Last night, when you stood in that hotel hallway and said you'd make me sign the authorization today, did you ever think about what that would do to me? She couldn't answer. The crowd grew even louder. Ji Hang suddenly exploded. That's a lie. I smiled, then pressed play. The hotel surveillance footage filled the screen. Ji Hang had his arm around Shin Jimin. His voice echoed through the silent hall. Get him to sign the authorization tomorrow. A marriage promise is enough to keep him under control. When the video ended, the entire venue fell silent. No one spoke. Shin Jimin stood frozen, her face completely drained of color. Qin Yanbei slowly stood up and buttoned his suit jacket. President Shin. Our signing ceremony is postponed. Shin Jimin hurried after him. President Qin. Please let me explain. He glanced at me before looking back at her. Save your explanation for your lawyer. Then he walked away with his entire team. Every camera in the room instantly turned toward Shin Jimin and Ji Hang. I disconnected my phone from the projector and placed the lawyer's letter on the podium. From this moment forward, Mansion Technology is prohibited from using the land's house system's name, its interface, its demonstration materials, or any part of its underlying architecture. Then I looked directly at Ji Hang. Especially you. He clenched his teeth. Pei Yanzhao. You think this means you've won? I walked up to him. Without saying a word, I reached up and removed the badge from his chest. I looked at the words printed on it. Chief Architect. Then I looked back at him. At the very least, you don't deserve to wear these 4 words. I turned and dropped the badge into the trash bin beside the stage. The sound echoed through the silent hall. Every camera captured the moment. For the first time, real panic appeared on Shin Jimin's face. The failed press conference dominated the headlines for the rest of the day. Chief Architect exposed. Fiancée revokes project authorization. CEO's former lover accused of stealing technology. Every trending topic struck directly at the reputation Shin Jimin valued more than anything. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, I walked out of the law firm. My phone rang. It was Shin Jimin. I ignored it. She called again. I ignored that one too. By the 7th call, she finally sent a message. Pei Yanzhao. Do you really have to push me this far? I looked at it for a moment. Then I forwarded it directly to Chun Ji. His reply came almost immediately. Don't communicate with her privately. Keep records of everything. I simply replied, okay. As I slipped my phone back into my pocket, a black business sedan pulled up beside the curb. The rear door opened. Luo Manqing was sitting inside. Get in. I stayed where I was. You can say whatever you need to say right here. Her expression darkened. Pei Yanzhao, do you really think you're someone important now? I remained silent. She continued coldly. Jaimin is under enormous pressure. As her fiancé, instead of helping her, you've chosen to kick her while she's already down. She looked at me with open contempt. People like you, even if you're talented, you'll never earn real respect. I met her eyes without any emotion. So, you respect Ji Hang? The corner of her mouth twitched. At least Ji Hang understands the bigger picture. I smiled faintly. You mean the bigger picture of stealing someone else's work and using fake performance guarantees? So that's what you call seeing the bigger picture? Luo Manqing's eyes flickered for just a moment. It was enough. I understood everything. She had known from the very beginning what Ji Hang was doing. The fake performance guarantee, the stolen technology, even the 200,000 yuan buyout agreement. She had probably been the one who arranged it. Without another word, Luo Manqing reached into her handbag and pulled out a bank card. There's 5 million yuan on this card. She held it out to me. Withdraw the lawyer's letter. Issue a public statement saying the press conference was all a misunderstanding. Tell everyone that the land's house system was jointly developed by you and Mansion Technology. She paused before adding, once this storm passes, Jaimin will register the marriage with you. I looked quietly at the bank card. 5 million. To buy my integrity. She smiled coldly. No. To buy your dignity. Then she leaned forward. You've been with Jaimin for 5 years. If she falls, you won't walk away clean either. I reached out and took the card. A trace of contempt flashed across Luo Manqing's face. She thought I had given in. Instead, I calmly held the card up in front of her. Ms. Luo, I've already recorded everything you just said. Her expression changed instantly. I placed the bank card back onto the seat, attempting to bribe the legal owner of intellectual property to withdraw a rights protection statement. While threatening me with fabricated joint liability, I looked straight at her. You're even more straightforward than your daughter. She clenched her teeth. Pei Yanzhao. I turned and walked away. Behind me, her voice turned icy. You think having evidence is enough? Mansion Technology isn't something an insignificant person like you can bring down. As long as Jaimin wants to, she can accuse you of stealing company data. She can say you're blackmailing the company. She can make sure no one in this industry ever hires you again. I stopped walking. Finally, she had said something worth listening to. Because this was exactly what I had been waiting for. They were finally preparing to strike back. Without turning around, I answered, then let her. At exactly 7 that evening, Shen Jaimin released an official statement. According to the statement, the land's house system was the result of Mansion Technology's entire development team. It accused me of secretly keeping company materials during my employment. It described my appearance at the press conference as nothing more than an emotional outburst that maliciously disrupted the event. Not once did it mention the expired authorization. Instead, she reduced everything to a personal dispute between an engaged couple. Soon, the internet exploded. People who knew nothing about the truth rushed to judge me. Ungrateful, dragging company business into a relationship fight. What a low-class move. Tech people are terrifying. I quietly read every comment. None of them made me angry. My phone rang. It was Chunji. They've started smearing you. I know. Should we release all the evidence now? Not yet. He paused. What are you waiting for? I stared at the back-end operation logs on my monitor. I'm waiting for Ji Hang to make his move. There was silence for 2 seconds. Then Chunji laughed. You think he'll try deleting the evidence? He definitely will. Why are you so sure? I looked at Ji Hang's login history displayed on my screen. Because he doesn't understand the system. He believes deleting back-end documents will erase the plagiarism. Unfortunately for him, I knew him very well. At 9:16 p.m. Ji Hang logged into Mansion Technology's internal document library using an administrator account. At 9:21 p.m. he deleted the first 3 versions of the land's house system requirement documents. At 9:24 p.m. he attempted to overwrite the source code submission history. At 9:29 p.m. he opened the permission settings and tried removing my account from the historical contributors list. Every single action was being preserved remotely on my end. That administrator account was only given to him that morning by Shin Jae-min. What neither of them knew was that 6 months earlier, I had quietly built an audit chain into every high-level administrative operation. Couldn't be erased. In fact, the more he tried to delete, the more evidence he created. At 10 o'clock that night, I received an email from Sang Ling. She was the manager of Mansion Technology's legal and compliance department. She was usually quiet, and we had rarely spoken before. The email contained only one sentence. According to the company's compliance procedures, any deletion involving disputed ownership of core technology must retain a complete audit record. Attached was the company's internal compliance policy. I read it carefully, then replied with only 2 words. Received. She never sent another message. But that document was invaluable. It proved that Ji Hang's actions weren't routine maintenance. They were deliberate destruction of evidence. At 11:30 that night, Shin Jae-min finally reached me by phone. This time I answered. Her voice sounded exhausted and hoarse. Are you satisfied now? I stayed silent. After a long pause, she said softly, You weren't like this before. I finally spoke. What was I like before? She didn't answer for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was barely above a whisper. Before, you always stood beside me. I couldn't help laughing. Shin Jae-min, I stood beside you for 5 years, and you gave my place to Ji Hang. The only sound on the line was her unsteady breathing. After a long silence, she whispered, I didn't know about Ji Hang deleting the records. The moment she said those words, my eyes turned cold. So, she already knew. I asked quietly, Then what else do you know? She didn't answer. I continued, Do you know he used the land's house system as collateral in his performance guarantee? Silence. I asked one final question. Do you know I heard everything you said in the hotel hallway last night? Her voice trembled. Yenjo, I was drunk. I answered without hesitation. No, you weren't drunk. I looked at the newly exported evidence package on my computer screen. You simply believed I would never leave. The line went completely silent. I ended the call. At the same time, the system finished preserving the final batch of evidence. Every record Ji Hang had tried to delete had become another piece of evidence against him. He had handed me the knife himself. The next day, Shin Jae-min asked to meet. Not at the company. Not at the law firm. She chose the Shin family's old mansion. Her message was simple. Let's talk calmly. There's no need to let outsiders laugh at us. I agreed. Not because I wanted to talk, but because I knew this wasn't a conversation. It was an ambush. At 7 that evening, I walked into the dining room of the Shin family's mansion. A long dining table stretched across the room. Both sides were already full. Shin Jae-min, Luo Manqing, Ji Hang, several Shin family relatives, 2 directors from Mansion Technology. Everyone was seated neatly, as though they had rehearsed this moment. The instant I walked in, Luo Manqing spoke. Sit down. I remained standing. Just say what you have to say. She slammed her chopsticks onto the table. Pei Yanzhao, you've caused enough trouble these past 2 days. Out of consideration for your past relationship, Jae-min is still willing to give you a way out. She pointed toward the chair. Clear up this misunderstanding in front of everyone tonight. One of the company directors immediately joined in. Young man, business is business. You can't destroy an entire company just because you didn't get your marriage certificate. One of the relatives nodded. Exactly. Jaimin is successful, capable, and respected. Being engaged to her was already a blessing. A man shouldn't be so petty. Ji Hang sat beside Shin Jaimin, wearing an expression full of fake sympathy. Yen Zhou, as long as you apologize publicly, I'll let everything you've said about me go. I looked at him. You're threatening to sue me? He nodded confidently. You accused me of stealing your work in front of everyone. That seriously damaged my reputation. I smiled. Then call the police. His expression instantly stiffened. Shin Jaimin frowned. Pei Yen Zhao. We're not here to argue. I looked at her. Then what exactly are we here for? She took a deep breath and pulled out another agreement. The land's house system will continue to be licensed to Mansion Technology. You'll issue a public statement explaining the press conference as nothing more than a disagreement between an engaged couple. She continued, Ji Hang will remain Chief Strategy Officer. He simply won't use the title of Chief Architect anymore. After a brief pause, she added, as compensation, the company will pay you 10 million yuan in cash, and you'll receive 2% of the project's future revenue. Before I could answer, Luo Manqing spoke again. And afterward, you and Jaimin can still register your marriage. The moment I heard those words, I laughed. For real this time. Shin Jaimin's face darkened. What are you laughing at? I slowly looked at everyone around the table. I'm laughing because you still don't understand. I walked to the opposite end of the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. I'm not here to negotiate compensation. I'm here to end everything. Luo Manqing slammed the table. End everything? Pei Yen Zhao, what gives you the right? For 5 years, you lived in the Shin family's apartment. You used our resources. You relied on Jaimin's connections. Do you really think you're innocent? I nodded. Perfect. I opened my briefcase and took out a thick stack of documents. For the past 5 years, I lived in Shin Jaimin's apartment for exactly 1,786 days. I placed the documents on the table. Every utility bill, every property management fee, every household expense, paid separately from my personal account. I flipped to another page. As for the Shin family's so-called resources, I only attended 2 dinners. The first dinner helped Mansion Technology secure its first hospital pilot project. The second dinner, I fixed your demo system after it crashed during the meeting. I looked around the room. That saved your company a 3 million yuan contract. I pushed the documents toward them. If we're settling accounts, then let's settle every single one. The dining room fell completely silent. The director who had accused me of ruining the company lowered his head to read the documents. His expression slowly changed. He clearly hadn't expected me to keep records this detailed. Across the table, Shin Jaimin stared at the bills with a complicated expression. After a long silence, she finally asked, when did you start preparing all this? I looked at her calmly. The first time you told me that I couldn't survive without you. The color drained from her face. That had happened 6 months earlier. Ji Hang had just returned to China. At a company gathering, he laughed and casually said, Yen Zhou is really lucky. Boss Shin practically keeps him. Everyone in the room laughed. Shin Jaimin never defended me. She simply patted my shoulder and smiled. He can't live without me. That was all she said. Everyone laughed. I didn't argue. That night, I went home and started organizing every payment record I'd ever made. Looking back, I realized clarity doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly, one disappointment at a time. Ji Hang suddenly broke the silence. Those bills don't prove anything. The land's house project was developed inside Mansion Technology. No matter how much you contributed, it was still built on the company's platform. I nodded. That's why I brought one more document. I placed a printed email on the table. Last May, Mansion Technologies Board rejected my proposal to independently develop the land's house system, calling it too risky. I flipped to the next page. Last June, I continued developing it through my own studio. Last August, after you saw the pilot results, Mansion Technology signed a temporary licensing agreement with me. Then I looked at the two directors sitting across from me. You both signed the rejection email. Their expressions changed immediately. One of them lowered his head and muttered, "We really didn't believe the project had potential back then. That's why the company decided not to invest in it." I looked at Ji-hang. "So the system you're using today was built by me after all of you rejected it." Ji-hang clenched his fists. Luo Manqing slammed her hand on the table. "Enough." She stared at me. "What exactly do you want?" I turned toward Shin Jimin. "I want her to admit one thing." She slowly raised her head. I looked directly into her eyes. "Shin Jimin, when dawn broke yesterday, did you already know Ji-hang planned to use the land's house system as his performance guarantee?" Everyone around the table turned to look at her. Her lips slowly lost their color. Before she could answer, Ji-hang hurriedly spoke. "Shin Jimin didn't know. It was my decision alone." I didn't even look at him. My eyes stayed on Shin Jimin. "Answer me." Her fingers tightened around the agreement in front of her. More than 10 seconds passed. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't know." I nodded calmly. "Fine." Then I took out my phone. "I'll let everyone hear the answer." I pressed play. Her voice filled the silent dining room. "Let him submit the guarantee. I'll handle Yenjo before the marriage registration. I'll make him sign the permanent authorization." The room fell completely silent. Shin Jimin froze in her chair. Ji-hang's face turned completely white. Luo Manqing suddenly stood up. "You recorded us?" I stopped the recording. The door to the private room wasn't fully closed. Then I looked back at Shin Jimin. "I gave you one last chance, and you still chose to lie." Her eyes instantly filled with tears. "Yenjo." I stood up, then placed the notice ending our engagement on the table. "Whether you sign it or not doesn't matter. We were never legally husband and wife." I turned toward the door. Before I could leave, Shin Jimin rushed after me and grabbed my wrist. "I admit I was wrong, but I never truly wanted to destroy you." I lowered my eyes to the hand holding me. Once, whenever that hand stopped me, I always stayed. Now, it felt like the hand of a stranger. I gently pulled my wrist free. "You never wanted to destroy me." I looked at her calmly. "You just never expected me to fight back." Then I walked out of the Shin family's old mansion. The night air was cold. My phone vibrated. It was another email from Sang Ling. The subject line contained only 6 words. Ji-hang's overseas resume issues. I opened the attachment. The next second, I stopped walking. Ji-hang's so-called overseas project experience was fake too. The next morning, Mansion Technology held an emergency board meeting. Shin Jimin never invited me, but I went anyway. Chun Ji, acting as my attorney, had received an official notice to attend. The meeting's agenda was simple: discussion of the land's house system ownership dispute. The atmosphere inside the conference room was tense. Shin Jimin sat at the head of the table. A thick layer of concealer couldn't hide the exhaustion beneath her eyes. Ji-hang sat on her right. He looked even worse than he had the day before. Sang Ling sat with the legal department, quietly reviewing documents. Her expression revealed nothing. The moment Chin Ji and I walked in, everyone looked our way. Ji-hang let out a cold laugh. "Mr. Pei has become quite important. You even brought a lawyer to a board meeting." I sat down calmly. "Some people have a habit of deleting evidence." Ji-hang's face immediately darkened. Before he could respond, Shin Jimin spoke. "This meeting is about finding a solution. We're not here to reopen old conflicts." I looked at her. "If the old problems aren't resolved, there can't be any new solution." She took a deep breath, trying to suppress her anger. Pei Yen Zhao. What exactly do you want before you'll restore the authorization? I answered without hesitation. First, Mansion Technology must publicly acknowledge that all core intellectual property rights for the land's house system belong to me. A wave of whispers spread through the room. Second, Ji Hang must be removed from every position related to the land's house project. Ji Hang slammed both hands onto the table. Keep dreaming. I didn't even bother looking at him. Third, Mansion Technology must compensate me for infringing on my rights by using my system for an unauthorized commercial demonstration and as collateral for a performance guarantee. Shin Jaimin's expression immediately turned cold. You're trying to destroy the company. I met her eyes calmly. No. You were the ones who tied the company's future to my system. One of the directors couldn't help asking, Mr. Pei, if the company officially recognizes your ownership, would you still be willing to work with us? I nodded. We can discuss it. A spark of hope appeared in Shin Jaimin's eyes. Then I added, but not while Mansion Technology remains under Shin Jaimin's and Ji Hang's control. The hope disappeared as quickly as it had come. She clenched her jaw. Do you really have to mix personal feelings with business? I shook my head. I'm avoiding credit risk. I handed a folder to Chun Ji. He stood up and projected the contents onto the screen. Ji Hang's overseas resume appeared. Consultant, MIT Data Security Laboratory. Project lead, North American Medical Cloud Chain. Jointly certified expert by 3 international organizations. At first glance, it looked impressive. Chun Ji clicked to the next page. Our verification found that Mr. Ji Hang's position at the MIT Data Security Laboratory was actually a 3-month visiting training program. He clicked again. The North American Medical Cloud Chain project roster contains no record of Mr. Ji Hang. Another page appeared. Of the 3 international certifications, 2 are simply certificates of completion from paid training courses. And the 3rd certification number doesn't exist. The conference room fell completely silent. Ji Hang's face turned bright red. You investigated me illegally. Chun Ji smiled calmly. Verifying information on a public resume isn't illegal. I looked directly at Ji Hang. Didn't you say yesterday that you could build a replacement system yourself? Shin Jaimin immediately turned toward him. You said it would only take 3 days to build a new framework. Sweat appeared on Ji Hang's forehead. I can, but I'll need support from the technical team. I opened another document. A technical evaluation checklist appeared on the screen. Since all the directors are here, I'll ask you 3 simple questions. Panic flashed across Ji Hang's face. I began. First, why does the land's house system use dual-layer asynchronous signatures instead of a single-layer key verification system? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I continued. Second, when tracing data across multiple institutions, why is a 3-stage reverse validation process required? His face became even paler. I asked the final question. Third, after the system's self-destruct chain is triggered, why can't the rollback function restore it directly? Silence. No one spoke. Ji Hang couldn't answer a single question. I slowly looked around the meeting room. This is the company's new chief strategy officer. Ji Hang abruptly stood up. His voice trembled. A strategy officer isn't supposed to know every technical detail. I smiled. Then why were you wearing the chief architect badge? He had no answer. Shin Jaimin slowly closed her eyes. Only then did she finally understand. Ji Hang wasn't simply bad at explaining technical concepts. He genuinely didn't understand them. At that moment, Sang Ling finally spoke. President Shin. According to company compliance procedures, Mr. Ji Hang must explain why he deleted records from the core project last night. Ji Hang immediately turned toward her. Sang Ling. What are you talking about? She remained completely calm. I'm only following company procedure. Shin Jaimin frowned. Deleting records? Sang Ling handed her an audit report. Between 9:16 p.m. and 9:29 p.m. Yesterday, Mr. Ji Hang used your temporary administrator account to delete and overwrite the land's house system's original requirement documents, its code submission history, and contributor records. The room instantly erupted. Every director turned toward Ji Hang. He panicked. I was only cleaning up useless files. I interrupted him. Cleaning them up. Until only your name remained. The blood drained from his face. Shin Jimin tightened her grip on the audit report. Ji Hang, why were you using my account? He hurriedly explained. I was afraid Pei Yanzhao would keep using those old files against us. Jimin, I did it for you. She looked at him coldly. For me? You deleted the company's core audit records. For the first time, Ji Hang looked genuinely desperate. Jimin, if you hadn't promised you'd definitely make him sign the permanent authorization, would I have done any of this? The room fell into complete silence. Every pair of eyes turned toward Shin Jimin. The thing she feared most wasn't Ji Hang's incompetence. It was him exposing her involvement in front of the entire board. One director finally spoke. His expression was serious. President Shin, I recommend immediately suspending Mr. Ji Hang from all duties and launching a formal internal investigation. Another director nodded. I agree. If we don't act, our investors will lose all confidence. Shin Jimin remained silent. Ji Hang stared at her. His voice shook. Jimin, you're going to sacrifice me? Her lips moved slightly. For a moment, I thought she might hesitate. She didn't. After only 3 seconds, she made her decision. Ji Hang, effective immediately. You are suspended from all duties. You will fully cooperate with the internal investigation. Ji Hang stood there, frozen. Then Ji Hang laughed. It was an ugly, desperate laugh. Shin Jimin, you're ruthless. He pointed at me. Do you really think sacrificing me will bring him back? It won't. He planned all of this from the beginning. I slowly stood up and adjusted my cuffs. You're half right. Ji Hang glared at me. Without another word, I projected the final document onto the screen. I did plan it. I paused. But it didn't start today. The screen displayed a rights termination notice. The recipient list included every pilot client, server supplier, investor, and regulatory compliance advisor connected to Mansion Technology. Time sent, 5:01 p.m. Yesterday, I looked at Shin Jimin. Before you came home at 3 o'clock this morning. The game was already over. The color drained from her face. After Ji Hang was suspended, Shin Jimin didn't come looking for me. Instead, she chose another way to fight. That night, a long article suddenly appeared online. Its title was 5 Years of Love Destroyed by a Man's Inferiority. There was no author's name, but every word pointed directly at me. It claimed I came from an ordinary family and had relied on Shin Jimin for everything. It said I was insecure because my fiancé was more successful than I was. It claimed that when our marriage registration was postponed, I became resentful and abused my technical authority to retaliate against the company. The article also included several photos. One showed me cooking in Shin Jimin's apartment. Another showed me standing behind her at a business cocktail party. Another showed me hunched over a computer in the company's break room. Each photo had a caption beneath it. The daily life of a kept man. The invisible man behind the CEO. A tech nerd feeding off a successful woman. The comments exploded almost immediately. Some called me manipulative. Some accused me of using love for personal gain. Others said Shin Jimin was unfortunate for getting involved with such a petty man. Shinji called me. His voice was cold. This article was released as part of a coordinated PR campaign. I continued sorting through my files. I know. You don't seem worried. I smiled faintly. Because she's the one who's worried. That's why she's doing this. He paused. So, how are you going to respond? I quietly looked at the photos on my screen. Every single one was real. But every one had been stripped of its context. The day I was cooking, Shinjimin had been suffering from a severe stomach ulcer. I stayed up all night taking care of her. The day of the cocktail party, I stood behind her because she had asked me not to overshadow Jihang. The day I repaired the company's computer, Jihang's demo system had crashed, and I stepped in to save the presentation. They took every sacrifice I had made and turned it into proof that I was beneath them. I closed the web page. Not with words. Chunji asked, "Then how?" I answered, "With the records." At exactly 10 o'clock the next morning, I released a complete public statement. The title was simple: Statement regarding the financial, project, and intellectual property relationship between me, Shinjimin, and Mansion Technology over the past 5 years. The first section covered living expenses, utilities, property management fees, groceries, medical expenses, travel costs. Every item was supported by bank transfers and receipts. The second section listed my investment in the project: server rental, testing tools, external security audits, travel expenses for visiting early pilot clients. More than 70% of those costs had come from my own pocket. The third section detailed everything Mansion Technology had earned from the Land's House system: 3 pilot clients, 9 signed letters of intent, 2 increases in company valuation during financing rounds. The fourth section showed my own compensation: a monthly salary of 8,000 yuan. No equity, no bonuses, no profit sharing. The final page contained only one sentence: I won't deny that I once loved Shinjimin. I won't deny that I cooked for her, stood beside her at events, or helped her through difficult times. But giving isn't dependence. Silence isn't weakness. And loving someone should never mean allowing them to erase your name. After the statement was published, public opinion slowly began to change. People found the complete video of the press conference. Others dug up Mansion Technology's earliest promotional materials and discovered that Jihang's name had never appeared on the Land's House system from the beginning. Someone even posted a side-by-side image of Jihang wearing the chief architect badge next to proof that his overseas resume was fake. The internet quickly turned against him. That afternoon, Shinjimin finally called. I answered. The first thing she said was, "I didn't write that article." I replied calmly, "But you allowed it to happen." She fell silent. I continued, "Only people close to you had those photos." Her voice sounded exhausted. "My mother hired the PR company." I answered, "And you knew?" She said nothing. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I let out a quiet laugh. "Shinjimin, you're still the same. You never have to dirty your own hands. But you're always willing to benefit from what others do." I heard her take a shaky breath. "Yanzhou, my life is a complete mess right now. Jihang, the company, my mother, it's all falling on me." She paused. "I admit, I handled everything the wrong way." "It's not that you handled it the wrong way." I cut her off. "You've just never seen me as your equal." The line went silent. After a long pause, she spoke softly. "Then what do you want me to do? Make a public apology? For real?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. As the president of Mansion Technology, publicly acknowledge that the Land's House system belongs to me. Admit that Jihang took credit for my work. And admit that the article was false. Her voice grew tense. "If I do that, it'll destroy the company." I laughed quietly. "See? In the end, you still choose the company's reputation over the truth." She hurried to explain. "No, I just need more time." I replied calmly. "You've already had 5 years." Then I hung up. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, Shinjimin still didn't issue a public apology. Instead, she made another move. She filed a formal complaint with the Industry Association. The complaint accused me of deliberately interrupting technical services, causing Mansion Technology severe financial losses, and requested that I be banned from participating in future industry projects. When Chun-ji received the notice, he cursed under his breath. "She's trying to cut off your entire career." After reading the complaint, I actually smiled. Good. Chinji looked confused. Good. I nodded. She finally brought this fight into the rules. What do you mean? I opened a folder. Inside were every service record from the past 3 years, every maintenance reminder, every email explaining the limits of the authorization, every message Shinjaiman had read but never answered, every time Ji-hang exceeded his authority and used the system without permission. I looked at Chinji. Public opinion can be manipulated, but rules only recognize evidence. The next day, the Industry Association officially announced the hearing. Friday, 9 a.m. The location was almost ironic. The conference center directly beneath Mansion Technologies' headquarters. Shinjaiman thought this hearing would be her chance to fight back. She didn't realize. It was exactly what I had been waiting for. Friday morning. Conference Hall 3 was packed. Representatives from the Industry Association, business partners, members of Mansion Technologies board, media observers. Every seat was filled. Shinjaiman sat at the complainant's table. She wore a black business suit. Her expression was cold and composed. She looked like the powerful CEO everyone knew. Ji-hang didn't appear. After being suspended, he had completely disappeared. But I knew the truth. It wasn't that he didn't want to come. Shinjaiman simply couldn't risk letting him appear. Once the hearing began, Mansion Technologies' legal counsel spoke first. Mr. Pei Yanzhao knowingly froze the land's house system while it was being commercially launched. His actions interrupted the product release, forced investors to postpone signing contracts, and caused Mansion Technology substantial losses. The lawyer looked directly at me. We believe his actions constitute malicious interruption of technical services. Shinjaiman sat beside him without looking in my direction. I calmly picked up the microphone. I have 3 questions. The moderator nodded. Go ahead. My first question. Does Mansion Technology acknowledge that I signed a temporary commercial authorization agreement with the company? The lawyer nodded. We acknowledge that. However, there was already a long-term cooperative relationship between both parties. My second question. Did that authorization agreement expire on the 12th of this month? The lawyer hesitated briefly. Yes. My third question. Does the agreement clearly state that any renewal requires written approval from the rights holder? His expression immediately darkened. Yes. I nodded. I'm finished. Whispers spread throughout the room. For the first time, Shinjaiman looked directly at me. I projected the first document onto the screen. Clause 7 of the authorization agreement. After the authorization expires, without written approval from the rights holder, Mansion Technology may not conduct commercial demonstrations, external promotions, performance guarantees, or client deliveries. I looked at the moderator. I didn't interrupt any service. I stopped unauthorized use after the contract had already expired. Mansion Technology's lawyer immediately objected. But Mr. Pei had long participated in the company's research and development. He cannot simply be treated as an outside rights holder. Without saying a word, I displayed the next group of evidence. The board's rejection email from the previous year. The finance department's refusal to reimburse project expenses. Server rental invoices paid by my personal studio. I looked around the room. When the land's house system was still in development, Mansion Technology officially rejected the project. The company refused to invest. It refused to cover the costs. I paused before continuing. If you refused to recognize it as the company's project back then, you can't wait until it becomes valuable and suddenly claim it belongs to the company. The conference room fell silent. One of the association's technical experts turned toward Shinjaiman. President Shin. Before the authorization expired, did Mansion Technology officially begin the renewal process? Shinjaiman gripped the microphone tightly. At that time, both parties were preparing to register our marriage. We believed the cooperation would naturally continue. I looked directly at her. Did we get married? Her face immediately lost its color. Even the moderator turned toward her. Shin Jae-min slowly lowered her head. Her voice became barely audible. No. Shin Jae-min's answer was barely audible. I looked at her. Why not? She bit her lip but said nothing. I brought up the Civil Affairs Bureau records from that day. From 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. I waited for you. During those 8 hours, I called you 12 times and sent you 26 messages. You never answered. The call log appeared on the screen. Then I displayed a screenshot from the hotel elevator surveillance. The atmosphere in the room changed immediately. I didn't show the most embarrassing footage. Only the images of Shin Jae-min and Ji-hang leaving together, along with the transcript from the hallway recording. The moderator frowned. What does this have to do with the ownership dispute? It has everything to do with it. I switched to the next slide. Shin Jae-min's own words appeared on the screen. Before the marriage registration, I'll get him to sign the permanent authorization. I looked around the room. This proves Mansion Technology never intended to negotiate a renewal in good faith. They planned to use marriage to pressure me into signing away permanent rights. Shin Jae-min's face turned pale. That was just something I said in anger. I looked straight at her. Then what about this? I projected the prenuptial agreement Luo Manching had handed me. The room erupted with whispers again. The industry association experts exchanged serious looks. One of them asked, President Shin, was this agreement prepared by your side? Shin Jae-min swallowed hard. My mother prepared it. I never signed it. I answered calmly. But you gave it to me. She had nothing to say. I moved on to the third set of evidence. The audit logs showing Ji-hang using Shin Jae-min's administrator account. The compliance policy Sang Ling had provided. A side-by-side comparison of the system records before and after Ji-hang attempted to delete them. One expert slowly flipped through every page. His expression grew more serious with each document. This is no longer just an authorization dispute. It now involves evidence tampering and taking credit for another person's work. Mansion Technology's lawyer immediately lost color. Shin Jae-min suddenly stood up. I never instructed Ji-hang to delete those records. I nodded. I never said you did. She let out a quiet breath of relief. Then I continued. But you gave him your administrator account. You appointed him. You allowed him to stand on stage as chief architect. Your mother tried to buy my rights with that agreement. And your company accused me of maliciously interrupting technical services. I looked directly into her eyes. Shin Jae-min, you can keep saying none of these things were done by your own hands. But every single one of them benefited you. Her eyes slowly turned red. She remained standing. She didn't argue anymore. The hearing lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the industry association announced its preliminary decision on the spot. First, my suspension of the system after the authorization expired did not constitute malicious interruption of service. Second, Mansion Technology was prohibited from using the land's house system's name, technical materials, or related content until ownership was officially resolved. Third, the association recommended an independent third-party investigation into Ji-hang's resume, ownership of the project's achievements, and Mansion Technology's internal audit issues. Shin Jae-min slowly sank back into her chair. She looked completely exhausted. After the hearing, she caught up with me in the hallway. Yenjo. I stopped. She stood in front of me. Her eyes were bloodshot. Did you really have to take it this far? I looked at her calmly. Shin Jae-min. Today I only proved one thing. I wasn't the one who was wrong. Her voice was almost a whisper. What about me? I paused, then answered quietly. Whether you were wrong isn't a question for me. It's something you need to ask yourself. She instinctively reached for my sleeve. Before she could touch me, Chun-ji stepped between us. Miss Shin, please keep your distance. Her hand froze in midair. I turned around and walked away. Behind me, her phone suddenly rang. She answered immediately. Then her voice changed. What? Ji Hang took the client data? I stopped walking. Ji looked at me. I smiled faintly. Looks like he's finally turning on them too. News spread quickly. Ji Hang had copied the contact information, pricing plans, and technical requirements of all 3 pilot clients before leaving Mansion Technology. He had already taken them to a competing company. For the first time, Shin Jimin experienced what it felt like to be betrayed by someone she trusted. But this time, she had no right to complain. After all, Ji Hang was the person she had brought into the company herself. At 8 o'clock that evening, Qin Yenbei asked to meet me. We met in a quiet private tea room. By the time I arrived, he was already there waiting. There were 2 cups of tea and a document waiting on the table. Qin Yenbei got straight to the point. Mr. Pei, I'd like to talk about the land's house system. I sat down. Mr. Qin, aren't you worried about getting involved in all this? He smiled. What worries me isn't trouble. It's untrustworthy technology. From everything I've seen, your technology is a lot cleaner than Mansion Technologies. I didn't respond. He slid the document toward me. We originally planned to invest in Mansion Technology because of the land's house system. But now that we know the system doesn't belong to them, there's no reason to keep taking the long way around. I opened the folder. Inside was a letter of intent for cooperation. The terms were generous. Even so, I didn't sign it. Mr. Qin, my dispute with Mansion Technology hasn't been resolved yet. I know. That's why this isn't a formal investment agreement. It's only a letter of intent. Once ownership is officially confirmed, we'll move forward. I closed the folder. I'm willing to discuss it. Qin Yenbei smiled. But I have one question. Go ahead. You had all this evidence from the beginning. Why didn't you release everything at once? I picked up my teacup. Because when people make mistakes, they always believe they still have a way out. If I had exposed everything on the first day, they would have simply claimed I'd planned it all. I wanted them to keep making choices, until they walked straight into the evidence themselves. Qin Yenbei laughed. You're much calmer than I expected. I set down my cup. If I weren't, I would have fallen apart the day I waited outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Just then, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. Ji Hang's voice came through. Pei Yanzhao. Let's meet. I glanced at Qin Yenbei. He raised an eyebrow, silently asking if he should step outside. Instead, I turned on the speaker. You can say it here. Ji Hang laughed coldly. You must be feeling pretty proud. You ruined me. You pushed Shin Jimin into a corner. And now you've stolen Qin Yenbei's partnership. Qin Yenbei calmly sipped his tea. I replied, I didn't steal anything. He made his own choice. Ji Hang's tone became vicious. You think you've won? Shin Jimin isn't clean either. Back then, when she was trying to secure the company's first round of funding, she inflated user data. Luo Manqing helped move money between accounts. And don't forget, the land's house system was first tested using Mansion Technology's servers. Don't think you can pretend you had nothing to do with it. My eyes narrowed. So? He answered without hesitation. Give me 50 million. And issue a public settlement statement. If you don't, I'll release everything. I laughed. Ji Hang, are you blackmailing me? He paused. Don't call it that. I'm only asking for what I deserve. I smiled. What you deserve is a subpoena. Then I hung up. Qin Yenbei slowly set down his teacup. You recorded that call? I nodded. It records automatically. Chun Ji once told me, when you're dealing with someone like Ji Hang, always keep your phone recording. I just didn't expect I'd need it this soon. The next morning, Ji Hang detonated his final bomb. He posted everything online. Screenshots of Mansion Technology's early funding data, customer profile manipulation, internal transfer records. Once again, Shin Jimin's name shot to the top of the trending topics. But this time, it wasn't relationship drama. It was corporate fraud. Shareholders immediately demanded an emergency board meeting. Investors asked for refunds. Clients suspended cooperation. Ji Hang thought exposing everyone would force both Shinjimin and me to compromise. But he overlooked one thing. Among the screenshots he released, several clearly showed his own involvement in manipulating the data. He wasn't just a witness. He was one of the people responsible. Around noon, Shinjimin sent me a message. "Can we meet? Please." I didn't reply. That afternoon, she came to my studio herself. It was the office I'd rented after leaving the Shin family. Just over 40 square meters. A few desks, a couple of computers, a whiteboard. Nothing luxurious, but it was quiet, clean, and everything inside belonged to me. Shinjimin stood at the doorway. Her eyes were swollen from crying. When she noticed the system architecture sketches covering the whiteboard, she froze. "You used to draw diagrams like this at home too." I ignored the comment. "Just tell me why you're here." She lowered her head. "Some of the things Ji Hang released, they're real." "I know." She looked up in surprise. "You knew?" I answered calmly. "I'm not like you. I don't ignore someone's flaws just because I love them." Her face immediately lost its color. "Yenjo, about the funding data back then. I admit we packaged some of the numbers, but it wasn't as illegal as people are saying. The company was dying. I didn't have a choice." I looked at her quietly. "And later, you decided you didn't have a choice when it came to me, too." She couldn't say a word. I looked at her calmly. "Shinjimin, every time you crossed a line, you convinced yourself you had no choice. The company was struggling, so you falsified the data. Ji Hang needed an opportunity, so you handed him my work. The product launch couldn't fail, so you pressured me to restore the authorization. Public opinion turned against you, so you let me take the blame." Tears rolled down her face. "I was wrong. I didn't move." She lowered her head. "I really was wrong. For 5 years, I had waited for her to explain. I waited for her to say one fair word when people mocked me. I waited for her to keep her distance from Ji Hang after he came back. I waited for the phone call that never came on the day we were supposed to register our marriage. Now, she was finally admitting she was wrong. But my heart didn't move at all. I handed her a folder. "This contains the recording and transcript of Ji Hang trying to blackmail me." She stared at it in disbelief. "You're helping me?" I shook my head. "No, I'm helping myself. Ji Hang dragged me into this, so I'll be the one to finish it." The hope in her eyes slowly faded. I continued, "I'll submit everything to the police and the industry association. As for you and Mansion Technology, you'll face whatever consequences follow." Her voice trembled. "What about us?" I looked at her quietly. "We ended a long time ago." She stood there in silence. Just before she walked out, she asked softly, "If I hadn't said those things that morning, would you have forgiven me?" I thought about it, then answered honestly, "No." She looked up in shock. I said, "You betrayed me too many times before that day." 3 o'clock that morning was only the moment I finally heard the last door close. She left in tears. I quietly closed the studio door behind her. My computer screen lit up with a message from Chun-ji. "The police have officially accepted the case involving Ji Hang's suspected theft of commercial data and attempted extortion." I replied with 2 words. "Got it." The real reckoning had finally begun. The day Ji Hang was taken away by the police, Shinjimin was sitting in a board meeting. Later, Sang Ling told me what happened. About 20 minutes into the meeting, 2 investigators walked into the conference room. In front of everyone, they asked Ji Hang to come with them to assist in the investigation. For the first time, he completely lost his composure. His hair was a mess. His face was full of panic. As the investigators escorted him away, he shouted, "Jimin, you can't abandon me. You knew about those things too." Everyone in the room heard him. Shinjimin sat at the head of the table. Her face was as white as paper. She didn't stand. She didn't defend him. She didn't say a single word. But Ji Hang's final accusation was enough. Whatever reputation she had left collapsed in that moment. That afternoon, Mansion Technology released another public statement. It claimed Ji Hang was suspected of personal misconduct. It announced that he had been dismissed from the company. It also stated that Mansion Technology would fully cooperate with the investigation. The statement was carefully written. Every responsibility was placed on Ji Hang. But the public didn't believe it. The timeline was too obvious. Ji Hang returned to the country. Shen Jimin personally picked him up from the airport. Ji Hang joined the company. She personally approved the hiring without following normal HR procedures. Ji Hang became Chief Strategy Officer. She made the final decision. He wore the Chief Architect badge. She personally approved the list before the press conference. She wanted to cut him loose. But every connection between them led right back to her. I didn't say anything publicly anymore. I didn't need to. The evidence would speak. The board would speak. The business partners would speak. Even the employees she had once silenced would finally speak. 3 days later, Sang Ling asked to meet me at a cafe near the company. As soon as we sat down, she slid a USB drive across the table. This is the last material I can legally take before I resign. I looked at her. You resigned? She nodded. Mansion Technology isn't going to survive this. The board is fighting among themselves. Luo Manqing wanted me to alter the compliance report. I refused. I didn't pick up the USB drive immediately. Is everything on here legally obtained? She nodded. Every file is contract correspondence that you're legally entitled to access. It includes all communication between your studio and Mansion Technology, and 3 separate emails where Shen Jimin instructed the legal department to prepare a permanent authorization agreement. Only then did I pick up the USB drive. Thank you. Sang Ling took a sip of her coffee. Don't thank me. I'm not helping you. I'm protecting my own professional reputation. At the cafe, Sang Ling slid a USB drive across the table. This is the last file I can legally take before I resign, she said. I was surprised. You quit. She nodded. Mansion Technology is falling apart. The board is fighting, and Luo Manqing wanted me to alter the compliance report. I refused. I asked if the files were legal. She assured me they were all emails and contract records I already had the right to access, including communications between my studio and Mansion Technology and several emails where Shen Jimin instructed the legal team to prepare a permanent authorization agreement. Before leaving, Sang Ling revealed one final truth. The day at the Civil Affairs Bureau had never been a last-minute accident. A week earlier, Shen Jimin had emailed Luo Manqing saying that if I became emotional that day, they should delay the registration until I gave in. Hearing that, everything finally made sense. I hadn't been waiting for a late fiancé. I had been waiting to be manipulated. They expected my love to wear me down until I signed whatever they wanted. They never imagined that once someone truly gives up, they stop arguing and simply collect evidence. That night, I opened the USB drive. The emails confirmed everything. Shen Jimin had ordered the permanent authorization agreement. Luo Manqing suggested buying out my rights for only 200,000 yuan. Ji Hang proposed using the land's house system as collateral for overseas business, and Shen Jimin replied, "Don't tell Yan Zhao yet. Have him sign before the registration." I sent every file to Chen Ji. After reviewing them, he asked, "This is enough to revoke their contracts, sue Ji Hang for infringement, and remove Shen Jimin from management. Are you sure you want to go this far?" I answered without hesitation, "I'm sure. There's no room for compromise." Soon after, Shen Jimin texted me saying she was waiting outside my building. From my window, I saw her standing alone under the streetlight with no car, no assistant, and no pride left. She admitted she knew I had seen the emails and only wanted to apologize in person. I quietly closed the curtains without replying. Some apologies come far too late. Half a month later, the court officially accepted my case. Mansion Technology's board suspended Shen Jimin as CEO, appointed a temporary management committee, and removed Luo Manqing from company decisions. Ji Hang faced investigations for resume fraud, stealing business assets, deleting audit records, and extortion. Later, outside the courthouse, I saw Shin Ji Man waiting for me. She looked thinner and exhausted. She handed me a folder containing Ji Hang's chat records about the performance guarantee and receipts proving her mother had paid a PR company to smear me online. I didn't take it. I simply told her, "Give it to my lawyer." She could only smile bitterly, knowing that the time for explanations had long passed. At the courthouse, Shin Ji Man handed me a file, but I didn't take it. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "You won't even touch anything from me anymore." I answered calmly, not wanting another argument. She wiped her face and said, "Yan Zhou, you never used to talk to me like this. I never thought I'd be the one waiting for you." Her face turned pale before she continued. That day, I really planned to go. I had already changed my clothes and picked up my household registration book. Then my mom called. She said if we registered that day, you would have a claim to the company in the future. Ji Hang also kept saying the investors would lose confidence unless you signed the authorization first. I was confused. I thought, because you loved me, waiting one more day wouldn't matter. I nodded. So you chose one more day. She quickly replied, but I regretted it. I came home that night because I truly wanted us to register the next morning. I looked at her and asked, "Then why was the first thing you said that I had waited for nothing?" Her lips trembled. "I thought you'd be angry for a while. Then forgive me like you always did." I shook my head. "You still don't understand. I didn't leave because of one missed day. I left because you always believed my pain could be delayed, controlled, and ignored whenever it was convenient for you." She broke down crying as I turned to leave. Suddenly, she pulled 2 household registration books from the folder she was carrying. One belonged to her. The other was mine, the one I had left behind at the Shin family home. I stopped walking. Her voice shook as she said, "Yan Zhou, I know it sounds ridiculous now, but I want to ask you one last time. Can we go back to the Civil Affairs Bureau?" Even Chun Ji fell silent. I stared at those 2 booklets and felt an overwhelming sense of irony. Just 2 weeks earlier, I had stood outside the Civil Affairs Bureau holding my own registration book from morning until sunset. I waited until the staff locked the doors and the security guard asked me to leave. Back then, I believed that if she had simply shown up, I could have forgiven 5 years of disappointment. But now she stood in front of me with tears, regret, and the same registration book, and I felt absolutely nothing. I looked at her and asked quietly, "What do you think marriage really is?" She froze. I continued, "Is it a contract you pull out whenever you need to keep me under control? Is it a way to save your company when it's falling apart? Or did you only remember me after you realized Ji Hang wasn't the person you thought he was?" She shook her head desperately. "No, it's not like that." "Then tell me what it is." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I answered for her. "You can't answer because you never saw marriage as a promise between 2 people. To you, it was always a reward you could choose to give me whenever you wanted." Shin Ji Man collapsed into tears. "Yan Zhou, I loved you." I looked at her calmly. "I believe you." Hope briefly returned to her eyes, but I finished my sentence. "But you loved yourself more." The hope disappeared instantly. I reached out and slowly took my household registration book back from her hands. She tried to hold on to it, but little by little her fingers let go. I put it into my bag and said, "I'm never going back to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I'll go to court. I'll go to arbitration. If the police need me, I'll cooperate. But marrying you, that chapter is over." She staggered backward, barely able to stand. Before leaving, I looked at the registration book still in her hands and said one final thing. "And don't ever call me your husband again. It disgusts me." She stood there frozen. Even Chun Ji glanced at me, surprised by how cold my words sounded. But I didn't regret saying them. They were the result of everything that had happened since that night she walked through the door at 3 in the morning. As I walked away from the courthouse, Shin Ji Man remained standing there alone. The wind lifted the edge of her coat as she watched me leave. It seemed she had finally understood one simple truth. Some people don't leave in anger. They simply leave and never come back. That evening, Mansion Technology released an official announcement. Shin Ji-man had stepped down as president and would fully cooperate with the internal investigation. Someone commented under the announcement, asking if I would settle the dispute. I posted only one sentence in response. I will pursue my rights to the end. Our relationship is over. There was no explanation, no bitterness, and no looking back. 6 months later, the Land's House system was launched again under a new name. My new company was called Jojia. It wasn't a large company. In the beginning, there were only 7 of us, but everything we built belonged to us, and no one could ever take it away again. The office wasn't as luxurious as Mansion Technology's headquarters, but everything inside belonged to us. Every desk, every account, every contract, every line of code was clean and honest. Qin Yenbei became our first strategic investor. He never interfered with how we ran the company. On the day we signed the agreement, he simply smiled and said, "President Pei, this time, you should be the one standing in the spotlight." I smiled, picked up the pen, and signed my name. "This time," I said, "I'm not giving my name away to anyone." Our launch event was simple. There were no dazzling lights, no grand stage, and no media circus. Just a clean presentation screen, a few clients, industry experts, and the team that had built everything together. Standing on the stage, I talked about the journey of the Land's House system, from the first line of code to its official launch. I explained the importance of security boundaries, audit chains, authorization rules, and why every engineer deserves to have their name attached to the work they create. One of the guests asked, "President Pei, after everything that happened with Mansion Technology, do you still believe in partnerships?" I looked across the room. Sang Ling was there, now working as an external compliance consultant for Jojia. Chun Ji sat in the back with his arms folded, smiling. Qin Yenbei quietly sipped his coffee, looking more relaxed than I was. I answered, "I do, but I no longer believe in partnerships without boundaries. The same is true for relationships." The room fell silent for a moment before applause filled the hall. For a brief second, I remembered the first time Shin Ji-man heard me explain the system years ago. Her eyes had sparkled as she smiled and said, "Yen Zhao, one day you're going to do something incredible." Back then, I believed she truly saw me. Later, I realized she only saw what I could give her. After the event, Chun Ji walked over and patted my shoulder. "Congratulations, President Pei." I laughed. "Stop making fun of me." "I'm serious," he replied, glancing at the stage. "This is who you were always meant to be." Sang Ling handed me the latest cooperation report. All 3 pilot projects passed the first review. We can begin phase 2 next month. I accepted the report with a smile. "Thanks for your hard work." She nodded calmly. "I'm being paid according to the contract. It's just my job." I smiled again. That was exactly the kind of relationship I wanted from now on. Clear, equal, and built on respect. No one owed anyone favors, and no one had to lower themselves for another person. That afternoon, the court released its decision. Mansion Technology was found guilty of using the Land's House system's demonstration materials without authorization. The company was ordered to stop using them immediately and pay compensation. Ji Hang's case was also concluded. He was found criminally liable and ordered to pay civil damages. Luo Manqing was removed from all company operations for spreading false information and attempting to interfere with the investigation. Shin Ji-man accepted management responsibility, stepped down from the company's leadership, retained only a small number of shares, and was banned from holding senior executive positions in similar companies for the next 3 years. None of it happened like a movie. No one collapsed overnight. No dramatic scenes. No instant downfall. But it was real. The real punishment wasn't public humiliation. It was knowing that every time Shin Ji-man heard the words Land's House, she would remember the future she had thrown away with her own hands. 3 days after our launch, I received an email from her. The subject line contained only one word: apology. I opened it. The email was long. She wrote that she had gone back to the Civil Affairs Bureau alone. She sat where I had once waited for her. The staff no longer remembered either of us. But she remembered everything. She remembered the dark gray coat I wore that day. She remembered I had been holding 2 cups of coffee. She said she finally understood that waiting for someone is never a small thing. Neither is being abandoned. She admitted that when Ji Hang was taken away, she finally realized she had mistaken the wrong person for her support, while pushing away the one person who had truly stood beside her. She said she wasn't asking me to come back. She simply wanted to say she was sorry. The last line read, "Yen Zhou, if I could relive that day, I would show up at the Civil Affairs Bureau on time." I finished reading the email. Then I closed it without replying. Not because I still hated her. Because there was nothing left to say. Time doesn't move backward. I had already stood outside that Civil Affairs Bureau once, waiting from morning until evening. I had walked through hope, disappointment, heartbreak, and finally acceptance. That was enough. That night I drove home alone. My new apartment overlooked the river. It wasn't large, but the view was peaceful. The living room no longer had Shin Ji-man's favorite cold white design, nor the cheap bookshelf Luo Manqing had once mocked. In my study, I placed my old computer in the center of the room. Inside it were the original source codes of the Land's house system, and the final traces of the hardest years of my life. I never deleted those files. They weren't a reminder of failure. They were proof that I had truly loved someone, and proof that I had eventually opened my eyes. Just then, my phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number. I answered. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then I heard Shin Ji-man's hoarse voice. "Yen Zhou, I watched your launch event." I stayed silent. She continued softly, "The way you stood on that stage. You're different now." I looked out at the river beyond my window. "People change," I said. She gave a faint laugh, mixed with tears. "I used to think you couldn't live without me." "I used to believe that too," I replied. Silence filled the line. After a while, she asked quietly, "What about now?" I answered without hesitation. "Now I know I couldn't live with the version of myself that kept disappointing himself." I heard her breathing shake. Can we still see each other someday?" "There's no need." She finally broke down. "Pei Yanzhao, are you really never going to look back?" I looked at my reflection in the window. There was no anger left, no shame, and no hesitation. "No," I said. "I'm not looking back." Then I ended the call. Outside, the lights along the river came on one after another. I set my phone aside, opened my laptop, and went back to work. In the upper right corner of the screen, the title of my next project shined brightly. Zhou Jia, Phase 2. I typed the first line of code. This time, no one was standing behind me telling me to stay in the shadows. No one was taking credit for my work. No one was using marriage as a bargaining chip. No one was treating love like a chain. At that moment, I finally understood what real revenge looked like. It wasn't making the person who betrayed you regret their choices. It wasn't proving anything to the people watching. Real victory was this. By the time the person who broke you finally came back, carrying nothing but regret, you had already built a new life. You were so far ahead that you no longer needed revenge, explanations, or closure. That night at 3 in the morning, she stood in front of me and asked, "Let's go register our marriage tomorrow? Okay?" I looked at her and answered with one sentence. "No need." 6 months have passed. My answer is still exactly the same. No marriage. No forgiveness. No looking back. My life no longer waits for anyone who arrives too late.